Good morning, listeners. I'm with my good buddy Bob Wrench. We're on a little hike today, and we're just outside of Burlingame, heading into Hillsboro. My goodness, look at these grounds, huh?
Yeah, this is beautiful. We just walked through a big wrought iron gate, and there was a little house there. Well, not little, a fairly big house, perfectly landscaped. And then we're walking further on, and there's trees everywhere.
And look at all this green grass.
Green grass, well manicured, perfectly taken care of.
I don't think we could have asked for a prettier morning, huh?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Chilly morning, but the sun is up and it's perfectly clear.
Well, here we are, Bob. We've arrived at our destination. Why don't you tell the listeners where we are?
Well, we're right now looking at a beautiful mansion, huge, large parking lot, and it's, again, well maintained, and it's the Burlingame Country Club.
It's a small town. Yeah, it's a small town. It's a small town. Just remember.
Hello, everyone. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and welcome back to another podcast of Burlingame. It's a Small Town, sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. My guest today is Brian Delehanty, a longtime member of this historical country club located at 80 New Place Road in Hillsboro, California's first country club. Brian Delehanty. Brian, thank you so much for coming today on Burlingame. It's a Small Town podcast. Before I pepper you with questions, why don't you give the listeners a little history about yourself, and then you can segue right into the Burlingame Country Club history.
Well, this is probably the only thing I won't need notes for, Mark. I think I got this one.
That's good, Brian. I like it.
Well, I was born in Lubbock, Texas, of all places, but family left there when I was 3 years old. We relocated here to San Mateo, grew up on Poplar. Went to St. Matthew's Grammar School and Sarah High School and CSM. Met my wife, Mary Lee, at CSM, and then we both finished our degrees at Santa Clara in 1976. So been here a long time. We moved to Burlingame. I've got three boys. Two of them live in the area, one out of the country, and we have three grandkids. Worked with my dad for many, many years, Jim Delehanty, who was well known in the area, has quite a character, as I'm sure you know from your years of experience with my dad. Never one to miss a quip or a quick joke or an occasional soft insult. But very active in the Rotary Club, and he was also a past president of the Chamber of Commerce. He loved Burlingame, and was actually built the second building out on the East Millsdale Industrial Park.
No kidding, really?
Yeah, right down the street from the Cowan Aircraft Company, which is now the notable, what do you call it? I say not a seafood restaurant, lobster primarily. The lobster shack. Well, that was an aircraft company before, but it's now pretty doggone busy. Anyway, Dad built his first building there and built another, and the rest is history.
Your dad must have had some great vision for Burlingame, gobbling up that acreage like he did.
Especially when you got 7 kids and a heavy budget.
Yes, indeed.
So he took a lot of gambles, but it all paid off because when Mills Field turned into San Francisco International, everything went nuts around here.
You know, you mentioned Mills Field. That's funny. In a previous podcast with Jerry Mangini, he was mentioning his dad, Vic, was taking a platoon from somewhere, and they got lost over by Mills Field. Anyways, I don't want to get away from what we're talking about. It was just funny that you said that.
Yeah. Well, I know Vic well.
I bet. So, Bri, you have 3 boys. They're all doing well. You're an empty nester now, I guess.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But, Mary Lee's a good cook, so they keep coming back.
Yeah, they seem to keep coming around. So, Brian, go ahead and tell me a little bit about the Burlingame Country Club. The history of it.
Well, the Burlingame Country Club, I'll go on a little history. I'm no historian like you, Mark. I have a little bit of a limited knowledge on that, so I'm going to have to defer to some of the history that many people have read and written before me. But none of this is new to a true Burlingame historian, but it's an interesting story because without that club, Burlingame would be quite different if it was the same at all. The club was formed in 1893, and how that happened was basically back to some pretty famous names. William Ralston, which everybody knows, was quite a financier of the California Bank, and he and Anson Burlingame, who was the ambassador to China, bought about 1,000 acres, and with the idea that eventually this beautiful land would turn into quite a beautiful city. So with that in mind, they had planned to build homes here. Well, Burlingame died in 1870 while on a big worldwide tour, and he never got to realize his dream. But Ralston began to develop about 800 acres of it. 200 acres was set aside for dairy land for the Palace Hotel that he owned, and they called it Burlingame Park at the time.
Was that what would now be part of Hillsborough too, though? These 1,000 acres, that encompassed Burlingame and Hillsborough?
Mostly Hillsborough area, but I can't, it did stretch down in certain areas of Burlingame proper now, but at the time it was called Burlingame Park, well, in his way, name. It wasn't a formal town.
Yeah.
So when he bought out Anson Burlingame's portion of it, he really owned the entire estate, and he hired a guy by the name of William Sharon, who's listed as mostly an unsavory character in Burlingame history, local history books, and he hired him to represent his bank, the Bank of California, to the Comstock lode mines, the silver mines.
Yeah.
And in the first year, Sharon made a deal with Ralston where he'd get paid 25% of whatever he brought in. Well, the first year he brought in $10 million.
My gosh.
So you can imagine in late 1890s how wealthy.
My goodness.
That's a lot of money.
A ton of loot, yeah.
So Sharon used his newfound fame and power to actually run for Senate, and he won. He became senator of Nevada. And he made a deal. He was known as the king of the Comstock, and he made a deal with Ralston that upon his death, he would take over his interests. Ralston made a number of bets in the silver mines, and they didn't always pan out. In fact, they were pretty disastrous. These were outside of what the bank was doing. And Sharon kind of took advantage of this in a way, because when the Panic of 1875 hit, there was a run on the bank when everybody found out that Ralston's assets were not going to cover their deposits. Well, it just so happens that the day after the run of the bank, Ralston, on his daily swim off North Point in San Francisco, drowned.
Really?
Yeah, that's kind of... And guess who took over all of his interests when that happened? Well, Sharon. Now, that's not a real happy thing.
Are we saying he suspiciously drowned or he just drowned?
Well, who knows? It's not just a cold case. Okay. This is an Ice Age case.
Okay.
So Sharon he took over not only the acreage, but the Palace Hotel, another hotel in San Francisco, and he had all the acreage in Burlingame, but he really didn't do anything with it. He hired a guy by the name of Francis Newlands. Now, this is the key character in the whole thing, because Francis Newlands worked with this guy, Sharon, back in Washington, D.C. as well. In fact, Newlands became a congressman of his own.
In California?
In California, and went back to Washington, D.C., and the reason that's kind of important is when Sharon died in 1885, Newlands was the administrator of his estate. They had numerous properties back in Washington, and he began a community called Chevy Chase, just outside of Washington, D.C., outside the nation's capital. And that included a number of homes and a country club, and it's still quite revered as an area today.
It's still called Chevy Chase.
Yeah, not after the comedian.
No, not after him.
He more or less stole that name, but that's okay. Yeah. But Chevy Chase included roads, transportation, water, sewage, zoning, churches, everything. And it took a while to get going because he made the mistake of building before he had the amenities. And so to attract people, it took a little bit of time.
Yeah.
anyway, it was quite successful, and came back to Burlingame, and he said, I got to do something with all this acreage, and I think I'll just follow the lead of what we did in Chevy Chase, but I'm not going to do it the wrong way this time. This time, I'm going to get the buyers before I start spending the money.
Right.
So he built 5 what they call cottages, okay? And if you saw these cottages, let's just say, mansions, okay? Mm-hmm. He built these 5 cottages, and to sell them, he organized a kind of a get-together with 5, 6 heavy hitters at the Palace Hotel, and told them that if they would agree to come down to Burlingame, he was going to let them have essentially 200 acres or so, and correct, I may be wrong on that.
Yeah,
but he said, I'm going to also let you, I want you to form a country club down there, and I want you to, and I'll rent you my estate, the Sharon estate, for literally next to nothing for 2 years to get it going. Well, the guys definitely weren't stupid guys. They had some money. And a lot of these guys weren't really the original owner, like Crocker. This is the son of Crocker, Charlie Crocker, and this is some of the others. But they decided, they knew a good deal when they had one, so they got together the next day without the wine and talked it over.
Yeah.
And that's when it was born. It was basically September 1st, 1893.
What was it called?
At that time, they hadn't decided on a name. So the founding group, just for, this part I'm going to read, Mark. I know that we're supposed, but I got to read these
That's
names.
Okay,
so
Brian.
we got William Howard, W.H. Crocker, which is the son of the Big Four guy, John Parrott, you know that name.
You sure do.
Major Rathbone, whoever the heck that guy is, and a guy by the name of J.B. Casserly and Hall McAllister, and they drafted an agreement to solicit members for the club. And they also elected a board of governors, which include a couple of names that, might be familiar, would be Joe and Richard Tobin.
Oh, yes.
Big deals, Hibernia Bank, and lots of big family money
Tobin
there.
Estate,
and a guy by the
right.
name of Harold Wheeler, which is kind of interesting because their family's always been involved in the club. So the membership was limited to 100 guys, and I say guys, with an entrance fee of $50
Okay.
and dues of $30 a year. So I've seen your car, Mark. It costs more to fill it with gas right now. So anyway, Francis Newland put it together, but even though he put it together and got these guys started, he really wasn't ever recognized as a founder, but he was certainly the instigator and the founder of how the club got started. So
these 4 guys, or this group of fellas,
guys,
got together to form a country club. When did the golf course come around?
Well, golf wasn't around for many, many years. This was basically a horse club. So the big deal was polo.
Polo, yes.
And at the time, they hadn't, the land where that clubhouse was, the initial clubhouse was a little bit, that was a temporary thing. Then they moved up more off Forest View, the second clubhouse. There were 5 clubhouses. The second one was a little bit in Forest View where it splits off onto Forest View, and then I can't remember the street to the right.
Yeah.
But it's in that area.
Are there any landmarks distinguishing this as you drive around?
I don't know. Because all of the houses, with the exception of the one that's used now, have either burnt to the ground or been demolished.
Yeah. So as I was mentioning, when we were walking into the course, or into the club, Bob and myself, we mentioned a house, I guess, we saw when we were walking in.
Now that's owned by the club. That's on club grounds.
What is that
So
about?
That's used for employees.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's, we have 2 buildings like that on the club. One's on the grounds of one of the old clubhouses, but it's on the golf course. So both houses are on the golf course, and those are used for club.
So who owns the club today? The city of Hillsborough? Is that how that works?
No, it's the members own the club,
Okay.
but then again, only if it dissolves does it make any difference. But everybody is an owner, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay.
But they don't have per se equity that they can sell. It's something you join, but there is no deed or anything like that.
Okay. So it's in Hillsborough, but it's called the Burlingame Country Club just because it was.
Well, the guys that formed it, when they were trying to decide on a name, there was a lot of push for, because they were called hill people, so to speak, because they're up in the hills. But because Burlingame was a previous owner of a portion of the property, and in honor of his, achievements under Lincoln as the Chinese ambassador, which really opened China up to the United States. Because of that, they felt they should honor him. Now, there is another, theory that all the survey maps had Burlingame all over it, and they like the name of it. But in those days, because of the fact that all these well-to-do people are building homes down there, Burlingame was considered a prestigious name. So they wanted to keep that.
Yeah. Well, that seems like it's worked out just fine, huh?
Well, so far.
Well, Brian, how long have you been a member of the club?
I've been a member since 1978, so I've been around a long time.
And your dad was a member when?
So my dad joined about 3 years before me. So how I came to be a member of Burlingame was kind of interesting, at least to me, is that I was frustrated because I took up golf. And my father was a member at Peninsula.
Did you play at Sarah or Santa Clara?
Played at Sarah.
Yeah.
And I took up golf because I was a caddy at the Burlingame Country Club.
Right.
My dad was not a member. Members' kids can't caddy up there. It's strictly, because they don't want to show favoritism, that type of thing. In any event, I was 15 and didn't even know how to play golf, and kind of hooked up with some of the guys up there, and they taught me. And I ended up...
and you got the bug.
Getting the bug. And besides, my little brother is beating me in tennis, and I couldn't stand that anymore.
That would be Kevin,
My dad,
right?
that was Kevin.
Yeah.
My dad was a long-time member of the Peninsula Tennis Club and played all of his tennis there. I took up golf. I joined California Golf Club in South City, which is an absolutely fantastic golf course. I was 18, got a special junior member because I had the handicap they wanted. And played some golf there. And then my dad joined Burlingame, and it kind of opened the door for me because I didn't know enough people to join there. And so a lot of his friends said, hey, your son's a good golfer, maybe he'd like to join. And they had a very good program for guys with very little money.
You must have played lots of rounds with your dad, huh, over the years?
Well, no, my dad was terrible at golf.
Really?
He kept telling us,
So
Kevin and I, it was great, but he was never...
He continued to play tennis then?
Yeah, he's a great tennis player.
That's funny. That's great.
He was a great tennis player, but kind of tennis player that drove people nuts because he was one of those, what they called dinkers.
Yeah. So have you ever held an office up there, Brian? I'm sure they have a board of directors and all that.
You got committees like every club and stuff, and I've been on all of those.
Yeah. And how often do they meet? Like once a month or something like that?
Oh,
random?
Yeah, when it's random. It's random.
So besides golf, and you mentioned tennis, how many tennis courts are up there?
Oh, I think there's like 8, which a couple have turned into pickleball courts.
And pickleball is becoming a rage, I guess. It's big time now.
Yeah.
Is that because some of the members are kind of getting a little bit older, and tennis, they're just done with tennis?
No, I think pickleball has just become a rage.
The rage.
And the younger people, love it. In fact, the older people love it. You don't have to run as far.
Yeah. And you have a golf pro up there, right?
Yeah, we have a golf pro up there.
The reason why I brought that up is because back when I was going to St. Catherine's, there was a young man, hidden behind me, called Gary Gage, and I think his dad was the golf pro up there at the time.
Well, it was Craig Gage.
Oh, Craig Gage.
Craig Gage was the assistant pro to longtime pro Maury Verbrugge.
Oh, really?
Maury was there when I was 15. Maury was the pro, and he was there for, I believe, 48, 49 years. Yeah. He's a great guy. We were very fortunate at that club because most of the employees, including the pros, have been with us almost a lifetime. So they've watched all our kids grow up, and they become part of the family.
Oh, I bet. And so if there's a golf pro, is there a tennis pro as well?
Sure. Tennis is not as active as golf, but it's certainly active.
Yeah. And I'm just guessing, because I've really never been up there, Brian, is there like a, what do they call it, a pro shop, where you can buy clubs and balls?
Oh, yeah.
And
just like, all the clubs. Sure. Is
the club open till 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock?
Well, I think it's really a matter of, are their members still here?
Yeah, got it. Good. That's I love hearing that.
I don't know if there's a solid come or go, but you were asking about the earlier when we were doing we started as polo, and in doing the little homework for you, I found that a lot of the areas around here, including the Burlingame High School football field, was used for polo.
I think it extended into Washington Park as well.
Yeah, and then South Hillsborough Schools Field, and the little logo on our shirts have a little horsey at top. That's a polo pony.
Yeah. Wasn't and I forget his first name. Might have been Charles Howard. Wasn't he?
There's a number of Howards. I think it was William Howard. I'm not sure, but Charles Howard just.
One of them had Seabiscuit, right?
No, that's the car company.
Okay.
And that's a different Howard family.
Okay, so that's not the Howard Avenue that's
one
here
of the
in Burlingame?
relatives of him is a member.
Okay.
So Seabiscuit, in fact, we were playing golf one day, and he told me about Seabiscuit and his lineage.
Yeah.
And the reason I was really interested in that, because we've all seen the Seabiscuit movie.
Yep.
He was the GM dealer, if I'm not mistaken, Howard was. And around the corner on Van Ness was a guy by the name of Billy Hewson of Hewson Ford. And old timers are going to remember that, but the kind of fun thing about that is Hewson Ford was, he was the first Ford dealer in the country. He was part of a company called Hewson and Merton, and guess who Hewson and Merton is today? You're going to have to guess.
Probably Mike Harvey Honda.
No. Well, the Ford dealership's gone, but Mary Lee and I are the last remnants of the Hewson and Merton Incorporated.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah, I bought the business from a guy retiring, and when I was like about the same time I joined the club.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, see, Brian, we're all learning something today.
He competed with Howard, but he was smart enough not to have horses.
Yeah. So speaking of all of the founding fathers and stuff, are there still any ancestors or relatives still involved in the club today, or is that all just so many years ago?
Some names that come up, of course, Tobin and DeGuigne, and these are all well-known people, and Wheeler, DeLemer, which is a Crocker, Tobin's, I think I've said that, McCreary, that type of thing. So there is probably, relatives of a relative that are still in there because the club really prides itself on the legacy.
Yeah. So, Brian, whenever I happen to walk by or jog by or even drive by the golf course, it always seems kind of empty. Is that just my imagination?
No, that's one of the beauties of the place, let me tell you. And people are always asking, he says, listen, I drive by the club, it's a beautiful day, there's nobody there, then it's raining on St. Patrick's Day and the place is packed. Well, that's because that's when we have a golf tournament. But so you won't really see it full until a golf tournament comes out. Yeah. But in fact, today my wife's playing in a little tournament to get the golf season started.
Are there several tournaments during the year?
Yeah, club tournaments. Like every club, we have a little club thing. But
do you have like an actual champion, a club championship? Where your name You ever won it?
Yeah, after 3 failed tries, I did win.
And is one time only, or more than
one time only? That miracle is
Brian?
Not coming back, Mark.
Me, huh?
Those days are gone. My 30s are long gone. But,
okay.
But it's funny because the guy that beat me twice while I was trying to get in there was just an absolute. He was the captain of his golf team at Stanford, and he was 60-odd years old, and here I am maybe 31 years old, and he was absolutely more accurate out of a sand trap than I was 5 feet from the hole. He was absolutely incredible. So we have a kind of a fun Christmas tournament every year where they give out gifts and make fun of one another. And
that's great.
He played Santa Claus, and done that many times myself. He played Santa Claus and asked me to stand up and handed me a tennis racket and said, "Here you go, kid. I'm not leaving anytime soon."
Oh,
I'm happy to say 2 years later I did manage to succeed, but not since then.
So we're getting close to wrapping it up, and I just had one or two more questions. Over the years, it's just a beautiful area. Have you added any? Have there been any new buildings added or anything like that? Any new construction, or is it pretty much the same as it's been for many, many years?
Well, the house is always refined and upgraded to
Yeah.
meet codes and that type of thing, and ADAs and all that requirements. The latest building that was built was a new pro shop, and of course, swimming pool.
It has
has been
swimming pool.
redone, and
Yeah.
then there was a building added for kind of a snack shop, and then of course a tennis shop. So, as far as major improvements, the standard things, nothing unique,
Yeah.
but just kind of as things go along.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up with this question here. I know that the Burlingame Country Club is your favorite place to play golf, but if it wasn't around, where would you be playing?
My favorite place to play golf, other than Burlingame, is the Little Northwood Golf Course up in Monterey. In fact, your good buddy Duffy O'Field played in a little tournament that
Was that called the Jack Daniels?
the Jack Daniels Open. We've, as we matured, surprisingly, we were banned. It was pretty funny.
That's funny.
It was a costume golf tournament. But I bring it up because the golf tournament was just something we had fun with. But the course was designed by Alistair McKenzie. And my good friend Jim Archibald and I were playing one day, and it was a mess, and they don't take care of it. And here's Alistair McKenzie, who designed Augusta National and Cypress Point.
Oh, my gosh.
And world-famous courses, many of which are in the top 10 in the world. And I said, the place is going bankrupt. Let's buy it. It's a Picasso with mud on it.
Really?
But we just didn't have the money at that time, raising kids and all. And sure enough, the people that were running it at the time got together, fixed it up, and it is an absolute cathedral with redwood trees on every hole.
Do you get up there once in a while?
At least once every 2 months minimum.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Brian.
but we have a lot of fun up there. So,
Brian Delehanty, what can I say? We're getting close to the end of time and today's session or today's episode. And I want to thank you very much for joining me and our listeners on Burlingame. It's a small town. Thank you, Brian.
thanks, Mark.
I'd like to thank Brian Delehanty for being our guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast. Thanks to my walking buddy Bob Wrench for the intro, Kathy and Shelby for editing and producing, and our musical director Bray. You can hear more of Bray at braymusic.com. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this podcast, and no part of this program can be rebroadcast or copied without permission. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.